Hi, everybody. This is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Regina Huber, CEO of Transform Your Performance. She drives bold, value driven, and heart centered leadership, and she created three signature coaching frameworks: powerful leadership transformation, new paradigm leadership, and get your dream salary. I'm super excited because developing our leadership skills not only helps us in business, but helps us improve the overall quality of our lives too. So, with that, welcome, Regina, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Thanks for inviting me to join you here, Brett. It's an absolute pleasure. And I just want to add, in the meantime, it's already 5 frameworks, but we add on stuff all the time, right?
Time, yeah, time doesn't stand still. So, if you're motivated, you're getting stuff done. No
Yeah.
surprise that you're already beyond that. But regardless, I'm excited to talk to you because I think what you do is so important and it's so essential to stuff that we, in our everyday lives, in addition to business. So there's a lot of stuff I want to ask you about. But can we start off with your personal story? I'm curious as to your background and how you actually started your career.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm currently a transformational leadership coach and freedom coach because I also love to really help people design their life on their terms. I call it a freaking amazing life. Okay, that's my term for it. And I'm also a trainer, training facilitator, and speaker at my company, Transform Your Performance, where I help my clients level up their leadership of self and others, right? So they can become thriving leaders with thriving teams. And I don't only help them up level their leadership presence and skills or to accelerate their careers, but I also like to inspire leaders really to create what I just mentioned, their freaking amazing life, which is also the title of my new book, Living My Freaking Amazing Life. And where did it all start? Well, I grew up in a tiny little village in Germany, in Bavaria, and you probably can hear that in my accent still, although I have lived abroad quite a bit, but not only in English speaking environments.
Okay.
So, my experience is very eclectic, Brett. I had some manager and leader roles at Boston Consulting Group, a global consulting firm where I worked on several different continents. I helped them open a couple of offices, and I also have experience as a business owner in 3 countries: Argentina, Brazil, and the US. And when I moved to New York in 2012, my intention was really to put all this eclectic experience into something meaningful that would make a difference in some way, but that was also aligned with my passion. One thing that always has accompanied me wherever I went is also dance. I love to dance. I didn't grow up with it really, but I love to dance, and I always seek it wherever I live. So I'm currently between the US and France usually. And in the last few years, I've traveled more in Africa. In the past, it was more, Latin America, some US, and of course Europe, some Asia, not that much. And I've never been to Australia, but one day I'll go too. And I have definitely done some collaborations there as well. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I know there's a lot more. I've had a very adventurous life so far.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Just as a side question, I'm
Yeah.
curious what your experience has been in dance in the various different continents and countries, because do you find that it's really different? Do you find that people's relationship with it is similar? Like what is sort of either the connective thread or the differences? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I think there are big differences, right? So first of all, it's interesting. So I've experimented with many different dances, both partner dance and dances that we dance by ourselves or in a group, right? And so it all started with Latin dancing really. Later, tango, which is also sort of Latin dance, right? And then the Brazilian dances that you cannot really find outside of Brazil. So I found, for example, in Brazil, a lot more men like to dance than in some other places that I had lived before, and especially also in partner dancing. And In Africa, people, it's part of a lot of people's culture automatically, or at least the music piece, while in Europe, for example, is not that automatic. Like here right now in France, what I mostly dance is Sabar, Sam Dombolo. So Sabar is Senegalese, right? Ndombolo
Okay.
is mostly Congolese. It also exists in some other countries, and yeah, and it's interesting, and some Afrofusion, the modern Afro stuff. I dance a little bit too, and what I have found is that it's interesting. It's a bar in this big group that we have this year. Uh, it's all women, the students, but the instructors are all men.
Yeah.
There's one in Paris who's a woman instructor in that particular dance. So these are sort of the differences. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there in partner dance there's always too many women that I can say everywhere.
It is fascinating. But it is funny too. I mean, I know, having grown up in the US and pretty much spent most of my time here other than on vacations, I personally am not a big dancer to begin with, but part of that's just because I'm not good at it. But it is funny because I would remember, like, even in high school dances, there was a small group of boys that were confident with their dancing, so they would dance, and a lot of girls would dance. I mean, the minute the music turns on, they're out on the dance floor, and it's very similar even at weddings until the guys start drinking enough that they don't feel inhibited about it. They're hesitant to get on the dance floor or whatever else, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, whatever. But I mean, obviously, it's a great creative expression. My wife and I have watched a lot of the dance reality shows and things like that, and what you could do with movement is just it's astounding, to me.
Yeah, and you know what I wanted to add, and nowadays what has added lots of more men to the dancing scene, I think in more recent years is also the all the urban dances, right? Like the break dance and whatnot. There's so many different types now, and I think that's where you also find more male dancers, apart from professional dance, of course. The all the contemporary and ballet and whatnot. No, yes. Now, it's to me, it's not just, although that's already very important, a form of expression. It's also a way to communicate and to communicate through body language, through intention, through energy. Because when we dance, we usually do not talk. So we have to be extra clear in everything that we communicate in that particular way, especially also in partner dance. If we don't do that as leaders, for example, the follower cannot understand us, they cannot follow us, they don't feel safe dancing with us, and the follower also has to be clear, because otherwise the leader doesn't really know what they can expect. So that there's this very subtle communication, and that's why I believe also, well, it's just one of the many reasons why dance has taught me so many lessons, really, for leadership and for business.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I've heard the word trust used a lot with
Mhm.
partner dancing, right? Because if you're doing something, particularly usually the woman is in a position where they're really vulnerable. If you don't trust that your partner has you, that they're not going to drop you on your head or miss you or whatever, I mean, you're really taking a big risk and throwing a lot of trust into the fact that this person is going to catch you, they're going to be there for you, and all those other things. And you could see that. You could see why that would be. And as you said, you're not talking. It's not like here I come, like get ready. You have to just know that you practice this, the sync is there and the trust is there, so it all works together. So yeah, that's fascinating. So in terms of your passion for leadership, where did that actually originate? At what point in your career did you really get invested in the whole leadership side of things?
Well, when I was 26, I moved to Spain, and I had just literally learned the language. There was an opportunity. I took it. It was never my plan to move to Spain ever. I'd never been to Spain. I went quickly for an interview. They said, okay, if you talk Spanish next time we talk to you on the phone, then you can come, right? And so at the time I didn't. I spoke English with them in the interview. And I did. And it wasn't a leadership role right away. I went there, with just like as basically a team assistant, and I just really wanted to move abroad. And at the time, I was trying to move to the U.S., but they wouldn't support all the paperwork and whatnot. So I said, I'm just going to take this chance. So I did. I moved, and 10 months later, I was promoted into a leadership role in that office in Spain, in Madrid. So that's when I was thrown a little bit into the cold water because I had zero relevant background, zero studies. Somebody saw that potential. I was probably a very initiating person, I don't know, proactive person, which is also, of course, leadership. Leadership doesn't come with a role, right, or a
Hmm.
position necessarily.
Right.
And they saw that potential, and I was very surprised, I have to say. So I did go through the interview process, just like the external candidates, of which there were a couple or three too, right? Local people, and I got the job, and it was a bit scary at first, Brett, because there were people who might have been expecting to be candidates too, and who had been there longer than I had been there. There were people who were younger or older than me, so it was quite a diverse team that I took on. And at a relatively young age, just because I didn't have that preparation, so it felt like it, at least at 27. I did the best I could, I think. Most of us try to do the best we can. And yeah, and I think I came from a very authentic place of wanting to be of support to my team while at the same time serving the needs of the business. Sorry, and the and living up to the expectations of the partner group.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. I when I was younger, I was actually in a leadership role, and the company was growing so fast that sort of also, I mean, accidentally is probably not the right word, but it was unexpected. And I was in a situation where I had people that I were on my team that were far older and more experienced. I had some people that were younger. I had people from different cultures, and it was fascinating to me. I loved it, but it was fascinating to me the human dynamics that take place because each person has their own perceptions. Each person has their own prejudices or ideas or whatever else. And so how you relate to each person and how you get them all to buy into what you're doing and the direction you're trying to go in is slightly different, right? So I always found that fascinating, but I always leaned into it and enjoyed it. It didn't scare me. It just was something that I said, okay, this is going to be a great learning experience because I'm sort of thrown into the fire here and I've got to figure out how to make this work. I mean, thankfully I had a supportive team, and my boss was amazing and stuff. And so I think that helps a lot when you have someone who's a good mentor who's helping you along the way as well. But yeah, that's interesting. So then where did you go? Where did you go from there in terms of your leadership journey? Or is that when you decided, hey, this is what I really want to do? Or were there other steps along the way?
Well, first of all, I helped the company open an office in Lisbon. So I had the opportunity to also learn Portuguese. And I did quite a few office build outs on the side, right? Which is quite intense. I once had two build outs at the same time, one in Madrid of an additional floor plus remodeling an entire floor and the new office in Lisbon. So that was really, really intense. So I would travel to Lisbon once a week. and take care of the office there, hiring people as well. It was operations plus the build out and the training of the people and whatnot. It was exciting in that way. I actually love to travel for work. And later, a few years later, I also helped them open an office in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So of course, Portuguese helped, although the two types of Portuguese are very different for those who
Yeah.
speak languages. And yeah, and that's how I went to Brazil. I was sort of on my way back to Germany then after 7 years in Spain. And I had this little detour of 6 months in Brazil. And actually, 2 weeks of those 6 months also in Argentina. I helped out a little bit in that office as well, where I had trained the office manager who had visited Spain to be trained, because those offices were in the process of being opened up back then. Now they have many more offices, of course, all over the world already. Now and then, yes, I spent the time there. Then I went back, did some European projects for a couple of years, went back to Argentina with a startup. I did their training and some other management roles there. The crisis hit Argentina, so I was back to BCG now in San Francisco. This was when I first moved to the US West Coast. Now I stayed there 3.5 years, and later I went back to Argentina again to open my own business. It was a bed and breakfast. And then I moved to Rio de Janeiro, so also the second time in Brazil 3.5 years later, and I had my business there. Not such a great experience this time around with a fraudulent business partner, which cost me a lot of money, a lot of, whatnot, a lot of things. but and gave me great experience and yeah, and an opportunity to grow and to, you know, the
It's
typical
great.
stuff,
I mean,
right?
yeah, you had a
When life
tremendous.
gives you lemons, make a caipirinha.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, that's the thing, you had a lot of different experiences, and it's interesting to me how sometimes when we're going through a particular situation, we don't necessarily see the relevance to our career path or our trajectory, and then you look back years later and you realize that you're using elements from things that you learned, good lessons or bad, in things that you're currently doing. And I always find that really fascinating. In my own, career journey, I've had some sort of weird things in there as well that at the time I couldn't see how it fit. And then as I got older and sort of looked back, I said, well, geez, it didn't even occur to me, but I'm using this from that experience in what I'm doing now. And I'm using that from this experience. And so it's amazing how, as human beings, we're able to take the things that we learn and sort of incorporate them and morph into different phases of the things that we're doing. I always find that fascinating. Um, so one of the things you talk about is a self-empowering mindset and heart set. Can you give us a sense of exactly what that is and why it's not just a mindset?
Yeah, I always say the two are better together. That's the why. So we can, when we are aware of the two and we use them consciously, what happens is we can really take advantage of this intellectual power of the mind. And of course, also be aware of our conditioning, which can be beneficial or not so beneficial, as we know. So it's either beneficial or limiting. And we want to be aware of that so we can potentially also turn something around there, right? There are ways to do that. And then we also have that very unique wisdom that we usually store in our hearts as a result of our own experiences. So that is uh, not so much on the rational side. Sometimes we also say make a decision with your heart when it's about a life-changing decision. There's a reason for that, because our heart knows what's best for us. Our heart, when we really learn to listen, then we can really access the intuitive power of the heart. And the intuition we have should not be underestimated really in business, because it's our truth. It's our truth. Uh, there are decisions in life that no one else can make for you, because You only know what's for you. And it's not that necessarily every decision gives you the expected results, but again, your self knows why you need to make that experience, I believe. So the heart has a lot of different meanings here. We can find courage in our hearts, for example. Fear is in our minds, courage is in the heart. And there's so many other treasures in our heart. I also like to say that people are the heart of the business, of any business. So here's the heart again. It's the core of the business, right? Core means heart. And of course, we also connect with the world around us and with other people through the electromagnetic field of our heart. We must not forget that. Very important detail.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, the sort of the resonance, right, of whatever energy we've got. I mean, I've experienced it in my own life in the sense that if I'm in sort of a negative place and I'm withdrawn and I'm not looking for to be upbeat or to be optimistic or be positive very much, I find that the people around me also aren't, but it's just because it's the way that it's the vibes that I'm giving off, I'm sure. Then you get into a situation where, and then when you flip that and you find that you're feeling really open and you're happy and talkative and all these other things, it tends to get other people also to resonate and feel that same way. And I think that it is fascinating to me how when you have a certain energy or whatever it is, it will attract other people of a similar energy. And so um it's amazing the intuition that goes into some things. There will be decisions that logically you think this is a bad idea, like everything about this logically says I shouldn't do it, yet there's something about it that's telling me to do it. And to your point, so often when that decision is based on your instinct and based on what you just feel is right, it tends to end up being the right decision. And so it's fascinating how that is, because we like to break things down and put things in boxes and have, T charts and things like that about pros and cons and stuff like that. But I don't think every decision can be made that way. I think
Oh.
sometimes it's not always about just the X's and O's of it. Um, so when it comes to passion, what role do you think passion plays in our lives, our careers, our level of success?
Yeah, I'm going to get to this question in just a second, but I want to add something actually, if I
Sure, yeah,
may,
go for it.
because I actually believe that pro and con lists are total BS, to say it clearly. Because when you need such a list, it's usually not an easy decision for you to make, right? But a pro and con list has never gotten me to anything like conclusive. If anything, I would make a pro and pro list. What's the pro of each? Because that is much more comparable to me than a pro and con list, in my personal, very humble opinion.
Hmm. Yeah.
But, yeah, and you also mentioned, this positivity. So yes, you absolutely. And the heart is also really about connecting with our emotions. That's not always about positivity, right? It is about compassion. It's about love, also, all these things that we want. However, it is also really about allowing ourselves to connect with our emotions. And that sometimes maybe seems like the opposite of that positivity in a certain moment, right? I just wanted to quickly add that so people don't think they
Sure.
always have to be like, ah, right? Because that's also not really necessarily what always helps. So coming back to passion, and thanks for letting me add that.
Of
I
course, yeah.
I always love to dissect things a little bit. Um, yeah, so passion, I believe it has a very important role in business. When we have passion, we automatically find things less uh, strenuous, maybe like it feels less like efforting. Yes, or pushing through when we feel passionate about something. And again, passion, we could also say it comes from the heart. Right? Sometimes we don't even know why we have this passion. We just have it, and we feel passionate about a certain cause. We feel passionate about a certain activity, and yeah, it just is more fun. And why not add more fun to our work? We Many of us grew up thinking that work had to be hard, that work had to be, this drudgery in a way, and and sometimes we find it really not easy to find the fun in the work and the joy in the work because of this conditioning. And I believe it's so worth it to really, you know, even when it's a task that you don't particularly love, to start it with, you mentioned energy earlier, right, with this different energy, and you might actually find it more enjoyable. And of course, when you have something that you're really passionate about, it's also usually easier to go through some difficult phases where not everything is going great right away, and to make it through. That's my take.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, I know, for entrepreneurs in particular, one of the things that I've always told everybody when I've talked to them about things is, don't ever chase the money because you think there's an opportunity somewhere, because whatever it is that you're going into, first of all, if there's money there, a bunch of people are going to be going into it. But second of all, somebody is jumping out of bed in the morning excited to be doing that every single day. If for you it's work and it's drudgery and you can't stand it, they're going to eat your lunch. Like, you can only compete with people like that for so long, and they will beat you because for them it isn't work. They exude the passion and the excitement about the daily, ins and outs of what they're doing. I was in a job years ago at the start of my career, and I had that awakening in that particular career. I was reasonably good at my job. I wasn't elite, but I was reasonably good at it. I had all the tools to be good at what I was doing. And there was somebody that I was working with that I had a conversation with one day, and I realized that for them, they woke up in the morning like this was their purpose on earth. And for me, it was a job, it was a paycheck. And I said, not that I have to compete with them, we work in the same office, but that's what you want it to look like when you're in the career, that because if that's the way you feel, you're never going to work a day in your life. You could work 16 hours a day and you aren't going to feel like you're working because you love what you do. And it's so much more important because then it doesn't come from a place where you need external motivation, or you need to pump yourself up, or you dread every Monday morning because it's back to work. And so I think all that stuff is super important from the focus of passion. I mean, I tell my kids, same thing. I don't care if you want to make money and conquer the world and all that other good stuff, that's fine. But do it in something where you're aligned with what you are passionate about and love to do on a daily basis. When you light up about something and you're excited to do it for its own sake, you found something that you can build a career on. So I think that's super important. So if somebody is either in an organization and they want to develop their leadership skills, or they want to be seen maybe by their boss as potentially like a leader, are there tips for things that people can do to either develop their skills or distinguish themselves as potential candidates?
Well, to me, it all always starts with self awareness, self knowledge, which then leads to self leadership. Yes, and it all starts there, because once you know exactly what your unique brilliance is, once you know how to express it and present it confidently and in a compelling way. And through your presence, not just through your words, because we don't only communicate verbally, right? That's, I think, when it becomes easier to be visible with the right people and in the right way that actually benefits you. So presence is a topic that, of course, is discussed a lot. We often call it executive presence, but oftentimes we don't even know what that means. Right? I think we all agree that it includes a lot of different aspects. The way you talk, the way you show up, the way you dress, your appearance, your body language, your posture. I mean, the list goes on. But one thing that we often forget is our energy. And it's actually one of the most important pieces because our energy talks louder and faster than our words. Also, over the phone, when we don't see people, in any situation, the first way we communicate is always through our energy, right? And yeah, it's actually part of our survival mechanism. And that's why it's so fast. Like it takes only 0.07 seconds by our brains whether to figure out whether we can trust someone,
Interesting.
for example. That
Yeah,
is way
that's
less than the famous 7 seconds that we often hear about,
yeah,
right?
right. What is it, 6 seconds or something? Someone figures out whether they're going to buy from you
Yeah.
or not if you're in sales. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and we can correct it. Sure. I mean, if we transmit a certain energy, which is often, by the way, received subconsciously and conveyed subconsciously too, then yes, we can correct this through words, through gestures, through, other ways. However, the first impression, that very fast one, will be that energetic imprint, so to speak. And plus, we still have to pay attention to our energy, even as we speak, because when our energy contradicts our words, what usually wins is the energy, right?
yeah, that's interesting. So is that's what you mean then when you talk about body and energy conscious presence,
Mhm.
you're talking about deliberately instead of just sort of by default choosing the energy level that makes the right sense and that aligns with who you are, what you want to be, and projecting that. Is that essentially, did I get that right?
Yes, and it's actually not just the energy level, it's the quality of the energy. So we can optimize our energy. Of course, we want to have high levels of energy because usually we feel better. We are also more productive, but we also are usually nicer, kinder because we are less tired, right? When we have that level of energy that we feel comfortable with in our daily work and in our daily life. However, this is also really about the quality of our energy. And we can optimize that, for example, before we go into a speaking engagement, before we go into a job interview, into a meeting, a negotiation, whatever it is for everybody. We can optimize that energy in very simple ways. I share some of those also in my book, Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine, which is my previous book. And yeah, there are exercises in that book to prepare mentally, physically, and energetically for these challenging situations.
Excellent. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about some of your frameworks. Now, I was going to ask you about the powerful leadership transformation, but in light of the fact that you have five, if you prefer to talk about something else, go for it. But can you share a little bit more about that with us?
Yeah, so some of them are definitely leadership frameworks, and then there's the salary negotiation one, right? The dream salary one, and there's one that is called Your Unique Assets, which is really focused on identifying and embodying your unique brilliance, as I like to call it. Now, in terms of the leadership, I have the three frameworks: powerful leadership transformation, which is a lot about self leadership and then of course is passed on through who you reveal yourself to be. I want to say not become, who you reveal yourself to be through the work of doing this powerful leadership transformation and going through that. So that is through that you will have automatically an impact on your team, and then of course you can also pass it on to your team in a way that looks like maybe teaching or mentoring, right?
Mhm.
And then the second framework is the new paradigm leadership that is more focused on team leadership. And then I have the thriving leader formula, and that really includes all the different aspects of coaching when I work with private clients. And everybody has different needs, so we don't necessarily always touch on all the different aspects. We, of course, prioritize depending on what's most important or most urgent to that person, or what they most desire, right, in that moment. And then we look at the other aspects, because after all, life is a holistic phenomena.
It totally is, and it's dynamic as well. So what we need today might not be what we need tomorrow or what
Mhm.
we needed yesterday. And so, to that end, it's interesting how things are always evolving, and there's always new ways to look at things and new information, which is fascinating. So, all right. So can you give us a sense of where can people find your products, find your services? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is transformyourperformance.com. You can find really pretty much everything on there. There's a page with the books, which are also on Amazon. So my latest book is called Living My Freaking Amazing Life, Create the Life That's Perfect for You Anywhere in the World, also in Portuguese. And yeah, the other book, Speak Up, Stand Out in China, is also on Amazon. I have a YouTube channel. I have my Rise to Lead podcast, and I'm on several social media, but all of that is really on my website. And for those who like to read about either career growth or leadership, I also have a LinkedIn newsletter.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks for that. All right. I have one last question because I think it's important and I always want to know what everyone's going to say. And that is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
First of all, I like to talk more about fulfillment, really, and about becoming a thriving leader, or living that life of a thriving leader, than purely just success. Because, of course, with success, we often connect money and a title. And to me, it's about more than that. It's also about the well-being, among many other things, right? So that, and then also I think, both for yourself and for your team, if you have a team, it's important to remember that no one can empower you but yourself, and you cannot empower other people. However, you can guide other people to empower themselves. I think that's very, very important to remember, that you already have that power inside of you, that creative power, you know, that that inner power that helps you uh, be strong when you need to, be soft when you need to, and all these different things. So we have so many beautiful uh, abilities and natural talents that we often underestimate. So remember that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Perfect. Thanks for that. All right. With that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Regina, so much for sharing all of your tips and insights with us. Visit transformyourperformance.com/leaderuplevel to schedule your free session where she'll support you to move through one specific challenge. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want for your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.